Most families with significant wealth assume that once the right pieces are in place, a solid investment manager, a trusted CPA, maybe an estate attorney, the wealth just takes care of itself. The hard part was building it, and the rest is just maintenance. But after working with high net worth families for decades, here's what we've actually found. The families who lose wealth, not in the market, but across generations, almost never lost it because of a single bad decision. They lost it because the structural gap that nobody in their advisory picture ever really identified was made aware to them. Not because one advisor necessarily failed, but because the advisors were never looking at the same picture. Here's an interesting statistic. Roughly 70% of family wealth disappears by the second generation, and 90% by the third. Most people assume that's because the next generation spends it or makes poor investments, but the research actually tells a different story. The primary cause is a failure to plan, not a failure to earn or save, but a failure to manage and transfer wealth with the same intentionality that built it in the first place. So the question isn't whether you have the right advisors. Most high net worth families actually do, but the question is whether those advisors are working from the same plan. And in most cases, the real answer is no, because most families have never had a single integrated strategy that coordinates across all 6 disciplines that actually determine whether wealth holds, grows, or quietly erodes. And that's what this video is all about, what those 6 disciplines are, how they interact, and where the gaps form when nobody's looking at the whole picture all at once. If we haven't met yet, I'm Justin Kuntz, a certified financial planner and managing director at Pacific Wealth Management in San Diego, California. And we're a fiduciary firm, which means that we're legally required to act in your interest, not ours. That distinction matters for everything I'm about to cover today. So let's start with the framework, because the way most families think about wealth management is the source of most of these gaps. Most people think of financial planning as a collection of separate services. Someone managing investments, someone else handling taxes, an estate attorney you see every few years. These feel like complete answers to distinct problems, but at the high net worth level, that model actually breaks down a bit because these 6 disciplines don't necessarily just coexist naturally. They interact. And the interactions are where most of the real value gets created or lost. Tax optimization is the most underutilized of the 6 disciplines. Most families are working with a CPA who does excellent compliance work, accurate returns, appropriate deductions, etc., but it isn't necessarily proactively modeling multi-year tax scenarios. Real tax optimization means structuring when and how income is recognized, how those assets are positioned across different account types, how Roth conversions are timed and sized, and how transfers are structured to minimize what goes into the IRS across your lifetime and your estate's lifetime. The difference between reactive tax filing and proactive tax strategy can compound over many years and create an oftentimes substantial effect. Now, estate planning is where intentions and outcomes diverge most dramatically. For high net worth families, a will is usually the floor, not necessarily the ceiling, but trusts, titling strategies, beneficiary designations, business succession structures, these are the tools that determine whether your wealth transfers efficiently or takes an expensive detour through probate, estate taxes, and even sometimes family conflict. Most estate plans are created once and are rarely revisited, which means that they frequently don't reflect current asset levels, current tax law, or current family circumstances. Investment management. It looks different when it's integrated into your plan. In isolation, it optimizes for returns. In a coordinated plan, it also accounts for your tax situation, your income needs in retirement, your estate objectives, and your concentration risk. The same portfolio decisions that look correct through an investment-only lens can be tax inefficient, estate inefficient, or poorly structured for income generation when you see the full picture later on. Risk mitigation is the discipline that most families underestimate because the risks worth planning for at this high net worth level go well beyond market volatility. Liability exposure from business interests or professional activities, life insurance gaps that leave a surviving spouse underprotected, or long-term care costs that aren't modeled into the retirement plan itself. Sometimes concentrated positions that represent a disproportionate share of their net worth. Each of these have a specific dollar consequence if they materialize into a problem, and most of them are addressable if you identify them before that happens. Retirement income architecture isn't about whether you have enough at different times. Most high net worth families do. It's about how you draw from what you have. The sequence in which you pull from taxable accounts, tax-deferred accounts, and tax-free accounts has a significant impact on both your lifetime tax bill and how long your portfolio sustains income. Social Security timing also matters. Roth conversion windows matter. Done well, this discipline alone can reduce lifetime taxes by hundreds of thousands of dollars without changing a single investment. And the sixth, philanthropic impact. Most families treat it as something outside of the financial plan rather than one of its most powerful tools. Appreciated assets donated directly to a charitable vehicle avoid capital gains entirely, while also generating a deduction. So charitable remainder trusts can also provide income during your lifetime, a deduction now, and a meaningful gift at the end. And when done intentionally, philanthropy simultaneously reduces estate tax exposure, defers gains, and creates a legacy that outlasts the portfolio. 6 disciplines, each consequential on its own. But the question isn't just whether they're all being handled, it's whether they're being handled as a system. And here's what it looks like when they're not. Each specialist is doing their job correctly. CPA is minimizing current investment or current taxes. The investment manager is building returns. The estate attorney drafted a solid document. Every piece looks fine in isolation, but what nobody sees is what happens at the intersections. A tax strategy that's built around maximizing pre-tax contributions creates a future RMD problem that compounds an estate tax exposure that the estate plan wasn't designed to absorb. An investment portfolio optimized for growth creates a concentrated capital gain position that the tax strategy hasn't necessarily accounted for. And an estate plan that was carefully structured but funded with assets titled incorrectly, this creates another problem. Insurance coverage sized for prior net worth that hasn't been revisited since the portfolio grew is another vulnerability. These are coordination gaps, not errors, just gaps. The result of disciplines being managed in parallel rather than as a system. And they tend to compound quietly over time, each one making the others more expensive until someone finally pulls the full picture together and sees what's been accumulating. The families who catch these gaps early are almost always the ones working with someone whose job is to hold all 6 disciplines at once, not just to manage one of them well. And that's the fiduciary difference, and is also the difference between a plan that looks good on paper and one that actually performs the way you intended. Before I keep going on this, if you're starting to wonder whether your own situation has coordination gaps that haven't been mapped, the link in the description below connects you directly with our team at Pacific Wealth Management. The first conversation is a real look at where you stand, not a sales pitch. Closing those gaps is one side of the integration. The other side is what happens when disciplines actively reinforce each other. And that's where the real compounding effect lives. Integration isn't just about closing gaps, it's about the compounding effect of those disciplines working in the same direction, where each decision reinforces the others instead of creating unintended consequences within them. None of this is exotic planning or reserved for the ultra wealthy. These are tools that most high net worth families already have access to. The difference, though, is whether they're being used as a system or as a collection of disconnected decisions. And figuring out which side of the line you're on starts with 3 honest questions. First, are all 6 of these disciplines actively being managed in your current plan? Not just investments and taxes, but all 6. If you're uncertain about 1 or 2, that's the gap most worth addressing first, because the unmanaged disciplines are almost always where the most expensive surprises come from. Second, are the people holding each discipline coordinating with each other? Integration doesn't just happen on its own. It requires someone whose job is to hold the full picture and make sure a decision in one area accounts for its consequences in the others. If your investment manager and your estate attorney have never compared notes, you have a coordination gap, even if both of them are excellent at what they do individually. Third, when did you last review all of this as a system? Tax law changes, your income picture changes, your family situation changes. A plan that was well integrated a few years ago may have a couple real gaps today that nobody's necessarily flagged yet. And if it's been more than 2 or 3 years since someone looked at all these 6 disciplines together in one place, that's the conversation worth having next. So if you've been treating these as 6 separate problems, or you've never had an advisor look at all of them together as a single system, That's exactly what the first conversation with Pacific Wealth Management is designed to address. This isn't for everyone. If you've already got a fully integrated advisory team that you're confident in and the coordination's already happening across all 6 areas, you may not need another conversation. But if you're realizing there are gaps you haven't fully mapped, or you've never seen your complete financial picture laid out as one integrated strategy, a first conversation costs absolutely nothing. And what you walk away with is a clear view of where you actually stand. If that sounds like you, there's a link in the description to get started. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.